So rough.
Rough. Rough. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. My name is Chris, the Highguy Jacobs. And today we're taking a look at our very first episode of the podcast, Highguys Joints of View. So thank you very much for tuning in. Today I've got my favorite co-host, one of my closest best friends I've had since I was, 16 now? Go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right, guys. My name's Matt Richardson. I haven't come up with a witty nickname yet. I will do eventually. But for now, it's just my real name, Matt. Known Jake for a long time. Chris, sorry. I always call him Jake. That's just how far back we go. Made a chat about the ins and outs of ups and downs.
That's effectively what we're here for. How long have you been in Canada now? I mean, obviously you haven't been here since you were born because that accent is definitely not Canadian.
I'm from Martinsville. What are you on about, man?
I did not know they spoke English in Martinsville. I thought they spoke bad English.
I moved here originally in 2006, and then that's when we met because I moved here in the March, and then we did. My 21st birthday was that May, and you was like, I didn't know anyone, and you were like, right, let's go, birthday, hit the bar, we're celebrating your birthday. So I have you to blame for that.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I consider myself a good judge of character, so you just happened to walk across my path at the time, and I got to take care of my friends. You know how we roll.
It worked swimmingly. We went from friends to brothers-in-law. So,
I know, and now you're banging my sister. And then, now there's that.
You just popped a beautiful moment.
Well, I mean, that's how you're supposed to do it. You don't do these types of things gingerly. You jump right in, 2 feet and a heartbeat. You know what I'm saying? Yes.
The way you've always rolled, man.
But no, you did hear that correct. Matt Richardson is my effective brother-in-law. He is currently sleeping with my sister. They have a wonderful child together. Her name is Etta. She's a fantastic child. And
crazy.
Yeah, and just an absolute nuthead. And and our topic of conversation today, I figured since this is our first episode, we'll keep it a little bit easy for people to kind of justify. And we're going to stick with a simple topic. That topic of conversation today is THC. Very simple. The psychoactive component of cannabis. For anybody who doesn't know, this podcast is effectively a cannabis-themed, educational, factual-based podcast. Yes, we're going to have some fun. We're going to make some jokes. We're going to smoke some weed. We're going to have some good times. But really, the purpose of this is to teach as many people as we can the ins and outs about cannabis, both the industry in Canada, as I am opening up a dispensary myself, but also the way that it's affected cultures across the world. I mean, Matt, you were talking, you're from England, and I can assume, right? And I can assume that the cultural impact of cannabis in England is far different than it is here in North America.
For sure. I can remember growing up, getting introduced to it around the age of about 13 or 14 in school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was resin. For the longest time, people would smoke pot, and the only thing you would see would be big brown chunks of resin. It wasn't until I got to probably 19 or 20, maybe even until I really moved to Canada, until I saw green being abundantly available. I've been back to England since, and it is now abundantly available. But for a while, it was resin. It was so cheap. You used to be able to buy like £2.50s worth of resin. Like a tiny little wrapped up tinfoil thing.
So when you say like a block, are we talking like a block of oily substance, or is it like a block of like is it hash? That's what I was gonna say. Is it closer to hash?
Yeah, it looks like they used to call it a 9 bar, and that it was 9 ounces. You would cut it into. I don't know why 9 specifically. I guess it must have been the shape of the container they used to set the hash, because it was always the same. It always looked like a pucked up sandwich bag or a rolling tobacco container.
Weird.
And you would get it, a hot knife cut into 1 ounce blocks.
So then, how would you smoke that? Just shave it into like a cigarette type thing, or
shave it, because everyone uses tobacco in England, right?
Right.
So you would, and always 3 skins. None of this 1 skin. A skin is a paper, right?
Right, right.
So you get 3 of your regular papers because no one bothers buying the big ones, and you stick them together, 2 either side, lick one to put on the back for support, fold it over, right? So you've got this ridiculous 3-skin thing, and you're just expected to know how to roll it, and if you can't, all your mates call you an idiot. It's just the way
Of course, of course.
right? But then once you've laid your tobacco in, about half a cigarette or about like maybe the tip of a cigarette as you start quitting and wanting more reefer in. And then literally, yeah, you would just like hold the bar, burn a bit off, and just crumble it in like some weird looking smackhead.
Yeah, yeah.
And then like, because it was already sort of semi burnt into the joint, what would happen was like, you would light the joint, and the whole time you're smoking it, you'd have these little blim burns, these little boulders just falling into your lap all the time. So you'd end up with t-shirts just covered in holes, man. And you would spot hash heads miles off.
No doubt. I could definitely appreciate that. It's one of those unspoken of risks that you take involved when it comes to smoking hash. You know what I mean?
Totally. And then so moving here and seeing how green was abundance, and that really was what you're supposed to be smoking.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember multiple times smoking with you, and like I would just be white as a ghost, man, puking my guts up because I thought I'd smoked weed, and then I moved here and it was like, nah, man, nah, no tobacco, no like processing the product. This is raw, man.
How it's supposed to be.
Right. And it took me a bit to get used to that. And now I'm not a cigarette smoker. I haven't been for a while. I just can't imagine going back to it. I can't imagine having a joint with tobacco in. To me, that just seems totally counterintuitive.
See, one of the things that we used to do, one of the cultural things that we used to do, we would smoke a joint and then you'd have an after joint cigarette. So you'd smoke a cigarette afterwards.
Totally.
As a way of kind of continuing the habit, or like, some people said that it would like, increase the effects of the THC, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, there are all kinds of stories, man.
Sure. I mean, I could talk to you 1,000 times about people telling us to microwave our joints because it's going to make the high better, but it's just not how decarboxylation works. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not how it works.
Letting Chef Mike take control.
You know what I mean? Like, and don't get me wrong, I'm a total fan of cooking with cannabis. Like, I think that's a great topic we can talk about later. Great ways to eat weed. But I'm part of the small percentage of people that metabolize it very quickly. I've eaten 500-gram edibles with no effect whatsoever.
Well, your dad's the same, right? I mean, that's another day, but your dad's the same, isn't he?
Well, kind of. He still he takes them for sleep. From what I understood, he was taking them for sleep. And the CBN ones, once we talk about other cannabinoids, cannabinol is one that's directly linked with higher rates of sleep and deeper rates of sleep and stuff like that. So that's becoming one of the more culturally acceptable things especially for older people to do, is to medicate for sleep with cannabis. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. Talking about how cannabis has come even in the last 15 years, since I was a kid, right? I'm 38 now. I've been consuming cannabis since I was 13. So I've been high most of my life. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a song, what is it? There's a song by, this is one of those bad things with my brain. I've checked the name of this band 17 times. Okay, I've checked the name and song. You, right, I've checked the name.
Use it for.
I've got
notepad.
Listen, my wife went out and bought me sticky pads. Okay, so I got Post-its. All right, so that's what I'm saying. She bought me Post-its because my brain doesn't function as well anymore. You know what I mean?
Good lad.
I've been high most of my life by Broken. It's a song called Broken Bones by Love Inc.
Love Inc.
Yeah, Love Inc.
I know them or the song.
I've looked up the title and I've looked at the name 1,000 times and I don't know why I don't remember it, and I have to look it up 1,000 times more. I know I will. But one of the lyrics is I've been high most of my life. That's the real me. I've been high literally most of my life. So my entire experience with it is I've seen, right, the growth of cannabis and the culture itself and the community itself over the last 25 years. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so hearing that you guys only had hash, like, that makes me look at what we had in Canada, and I have a lot more respect for it. Don't get me wrong, they talk a lot about what's out in BC, right? British Columbia cannabis has always been, they always consider it, it's always been considered world grade, some of the best you'll ever get. But I would argue that some of the best you'll actually find is in Saskatchewan, where some of the more passionate individuals are. And I think
I've heard that a lot.
Yeah.
I've heard that a lot. I mean, it makes sense. We got nothing but flat land and stuff to grow here, right? Like some of certainly Canada's best farmers for other produce are here, creating cereal to feed the rest of Canada in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, that's what I would guess.
Some people here are going to be pretty good at growing other things too.
Well, you'd assume so, and I mean, especially since it's such a new thing. Don't get me wrong; they had like the medicinal side, the MMRPs, where you could, in the AMPR something or AMCRP or something. It's one of these things that they used to have.
Hoops, right?
Yeah, you had to.
An absolute hoop jump.
Yeah, you had to like go get doctor's approvals, and you had to go and speak to specific doctors, and then they had to give you a specific, then they had to give you a dosage, what your prescription was, and then you had to go reapply for the ACMPR in order to get your license to grow, and then they had to allow you how many. So it took a heck of a long time, and my wife and I at the time ended up being able to grow something like 39 plants between us, and then they legalized, and it was instantly down to 4 each, and we were like, well, that's not good. And regulations really haven't changed much since then. Yes, there is another system where you can still end up growing more for yourself, but again, more hoops to jump through, and they didn't grandfather people in, right? So it was an instant, just a big ball ache for anyone who's there, and if you can just get it legal now, what's worth the headache of going through you know what I mean?
That's had a massive impact on, I mean, obviously the economy, which was what it was intended to. Legalization, is what I'm getting at. But the impact on, from the user up. Like I used to have a guy I would go and see all the time for years.
Yeah.
For years. $10 a gram, didn't matter what it was, didn't matter how much you were buying, you didn't get a discount. It was just $10 a gram. You always had it. And that was great. And then as soon as it went legalized, over the months, very quickly, it was less and less visits to Buddy. And now I can't remember the last time I saw that guy. And that's brutal.
Which is funny because since legalization, I'll be the first one to say I still get visits from my friends. You know what I'm saying? Like I still absolutely. Because if you look at the actual industry itself, the funny part about it is it's cheaper now. Like my the guys that I go and visit will always do it cheaper than I get it at the store. And
they have to.
Well, I mean, they do. It's part of, but it's also because they can. Since legalization, production on cannabis has dropped drastically. Like the cost to produce is far less now than it's been before, and we're producing way better grade. So it's easier to get better stuff. They've already got the connections and the know-how to produce the materials, so they're producing better stuff. Right? Now, the fear is that it's unregulated, and the fear is that it's, it's untested, so you really don't know what's in it. And you're right, 100% you're right. But that's the same with everything you're buying. If I'm going to a farmer, for example, right, to buy meat, or if I'm going to a farmer to buy eggs or to buy chicken, anything that we consume on the daily basis, I'm assuming that farmer is doing everything right to maintain those chickens, eggs, beef, and the rest.
Are you talking versus buying the produce from a butcher or from a store even?
Right, from the quote unquote regulators.
Got you.
Right? So if I go directly to somebody else and buy or anything else, if I go and buy a shirt from someone who's making them at home, right? Crafting at home. Technically unregulated. Right? If I go to any of those types of situations, I'm assuming that the person is making it to the best of their ability. I'm assuming that they're doing everything properly. I'm assuming they're not beating kids to, make the materials for their shirts. You know what I'm saying? Right? I'm assuming they're doing all those things.
If you really want that peace of mind, then you have to buy legally.
Right. That becomes the thing. So you have to assume that if you're buying legally, it's all done properly. But let's also be clear about one thing. Regulated markets for a lot of things like clothes, like jewelry. I mean, it's very heavily controlled. And we can't say that it's all done morally either. Are clothes produced morally? Look at Wish. Look at any of those, right? Any of those cheap, what do they call, fast fashion places, right? It's all. Go ahead.
I'd be curious to compare it to the production of things like liquor and alcohol. In that it's a known controlled substance. You're not mass producing it for everybody. I know there's probably more adults than there are kids, but I don't know.
Like consuming. I mean, it'd be interesting to see. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's always going to be better on the black market. Absolutely, you're going to find, it's like anything else. If you for certain drugs, for example, you run into certain situations where maybe they're cut with something bad. That type of thing is going to happen. Mm-hmm. But if you trust the source of where you're getting it from, like I've been dealing with my guy now for, 15 years. You know what I mean? So, and he's been producing the same stuff for the last 15 years. So I have to trust his output because it's always been high quality. It's always been, right? He's always produced and provided for me. And because it's cheaper.
The best thing for legalization, though, and I'm all for it because of this, is how easy it is for anybody now to walk into a store, get the advice they need, and walk out with a product without having to feel like they're doing something shady or they're a bad person. Like, all that stigma's now gone for me anyway.
It should be. And I think the big part that we're dealing with now is just the ramifications of the past and how it's going to ripple out through the decisions that we've already made. So like if you look, for example, at like culturally cannabis is acceptable, right? Mm-hmm. But what about the people that were simply caught with possessing cannabis while it was illegal, not distributing or anything like that, who are in long-term jail situations because they were simply possessing, right?
Yeah, I don't know about the stats on how many people in Canada got their hands slapped with that. I'm sure there was a lot.
It's a lot. Absolutely, it's a lot.
But I know that's definitely something that holds back legalization in America.
Well, in the United States, it's a little bit different, though they did just declassify, or on the grounds, I'm not sure if it has been done yet or is being done, of declassifying it from a class 3. Or is it a class, like the highest ranking? I'm not sure if that's 3 or 1, whichever side. But they're bringing it down a ranking, so it's not on the same classification as heroin and like cocaine and stuff like that.
That's going to be at a government level.
Yeah, federally, like the drug administration, the whatever, not the DEA, because they're like the enforcement administration. It's who's the one that does like the food and drug, the FDA? Is that it? Yeah. So like the FDA regulations, they're bringing it down from like the highest class. I think they're only going down 1, so that doesn't still include medicinal benefits, which is still bullshit to me because like, I don't know if you know anything about cannabis, but there's a lot of medicinal benefits. There's hundreds of cannabinoids, I
think about California, just as one particular state. Can you imagine if it was like, right, it's totally legal, completely. Like any, you can carry what you want, it's totally fine. Same rules as smoking, you can't smoke it. And
is that how California is?
It's not, but imagine, like, I think it is legal there to an extent, but I don't know if it's the same as what we've got here. Like, I don't know or Margaret can walk into a store and pick up an ounce if she wants.
Well, I know that it's legal in like 28 states or something like that. Like it's progressing very quickly to be like statewide regulated, but it's still federally illegal. Like, and that's
Google and we'll just check that.
That's a good call. But it's still federally illegal, and that's the problem.
I can't see my You'll have to check it. I'm dead serious. Okay. Because of where I've got my camera set up, I
Camera's
can't
in
see
the
all my
way.
shortcuts or anything. This
That's
is
okay.
so
That's okay.
unprofessional.
No,
I have
no.
a
Hey,
feeling it's
listen.
legal. But my point was, so like, if they make it legal to have possession of it or whatever up to a certain amount, like it is here, what are the ramifications of that on people who are in jail at the moment serving sentences for being caught with a joint or whatever? Or because you hear stories about that, wild, crazy stories, man.
So in the United States, according to Wikipedia, in the United States, cannabis is legal in 38 of 50 states for medical use and 24 states for recreational use. So I was right within that. It's currently federally classified as a Schedule 1, but it's being updated. Like, that's one of the things that they're working on right now to update. And let me just double check reclassification. I know this is a new thing. Rescheduling update. This is as of August. After the public comment period closed on December or on July 22nd, proposed rules to reschedule cannabis from... Oh, they want to go from Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3. Cannabis industry seems to be holding its collective breath as it waits for it. So we're basically just waiting for the stuff to come down. But it's been done as of like August, right? So July 22nd is when it started, when the public comment period closed. And this is the Department of Justice's proposed rule to reschedule cannabis. The DOJ. That's cool. So and they're looking to reschedule it from Class 1 to Class 3, which is way better in regards to it. But the argument has always been like what to do with people who are in jail right now. And I think the problem is, like, the argument is that you have to keep them in jail because they broke the law at the time.
That's fair.
And I see that. But I also understand that, like, leniencies can be made to put less pressure on the justice system. But I'm also one of those people who also thinks that the entire justice system needs to be reworked from the bottom up. I think for-profit prisons, for example, like they have in the United States, are astronomically just asinine. But that's an opinion for a different episode.
Yeah, another one. Yeah, well, that's a heavy one because I've got things about that as well. Anyway,
but either way, they wanted to reschedule it, which is fantastic if it can happen, because obviously removing it from there is ideal, what we need. But I did hear one of the issues that we're going to face in Canada is that this next election cycle is up in the air. Right? Our next election cycle here in Canada is messed, to say anything less, because the Liberals have been in power for, long enough time that the pendulum has swung. And True Dope, as they call him now, really hasn't connected with the masses. So polling, yeah, that's what they're saying. So polling is showing that he's not going to win. And unfortunately, the only response Canadians have to a Liberal party is a Conservative party. So my fear is that we're going to end up with a Conservative party. And they have hinted at stricter regulations on cannabis. On the legalization, like on the legalized aspect of cannabis, which is right around the time when we're supposed to be having these regulations looked at and loosened. We were supposed to have these done in 2020, but what happened in 2020?
So, got COVID.
Yeah.
So, what are they suggesting, or what are they hinting at? What have you heard?
Well,
doing?
Originally, I mean, I'd have to dive deeper into their platform now. But there were talks originally of them wanting to effectively, like, for the most part, re-legalize it. You know what I'm saying? Like, almost go back 180 degrees on what the Liberals have started with their legalization process back in 2018. So
the best thing anyone could do is to go forward and do the Amsterdam thing and let us have coffee shops and designated smoking areas, just like pubs are for alcohol consumption.
So this is the thing, right? So when they legalized back in 2018, the whole process was to reevaluate it within the next 2 years and look at the regulations since then. And those regulations haven't been touched since then because we had COVID, and then we had, you know, the economy's in turmoil, and now there's an election cycle, and then there, you know, like it's just been a continuing stagger of things they've never been able to get back to address. And only now are they starting to address things like, are they starting to talk about things like THC concentration in edibles? Because right now there's a 10 milligram limit on a package of edibles.
Right.
Right. In the regulated market, there's a 10 milligram limit on packaged edibles.
Which for a first-time user is fine.
Sure.
Anyone who smokes more than a joint every now and again, it's utterly useless.
Well, not only that, but I'm a daily consumer. Like I mentioned, I've taken 500 milligram edibles with no effect. So if I'm going to try to enjoy cannabis as an edible out in the public market, I mean, I'm talking...
You're going to have a whole cake.
Well, not only that, let's say the average pack is, you know, some of them are $5. You can typically pick them up for $5. So that's like that's like 250. No, that's like $250 on edibles.
Yeah, the legalized edibles side of things is a bit of a joke, man. It really is. And most stores you go to will sort of, especially if you frequent there, will tell you like it's a bit of a joke.
Well, I think the problem is that the understanding of cannabis in the government's eyes is not there. So they haven't really connected with the community to figure out what they actually need, right? So the legal limit for what you're allowed to drive with, for example, I believe is 5 milligrams per milliliter, which for an avid consumer like myself, I could stop smoking today and I would still technically blow over tomorrow. 24 hours later, I would still technically blow over. 48 hours later, I could still technically blow over, having consumed no cannabis at all. Because it's stored in the fat cells, it's released over time. I'm a big guy and I've been consuming a lot, so there's a lot stored in my fat cells. So I walk around at a higher average THC to blood concentration than the average person. But again, I've been consuming since I was 13.
You got him open and this guy's green, man.
I've been consuming since I was 13. So like, I don't even have a bloodstream. I've got a weed stream. Do you know what I'm saying? They call me the high guy for a reason, you know?
I believe it, man.
Yeah.
I believe it. Oh, I love it.
But it becomes one of those conversations where you look at it and say, what is the purpose of legalization? Why did they do it? What was their concept? What was their concern?
I mean, the easy and obvious choice has to be, where's my bit? There's all this money being made from guys out there. Where's my bit? The government wanted to make their cut. Surely.
That wasn't... I mean, obviously, we can say what we think it is, and I would assume that has to do with it because there's a huge amount of money going for it, especially now, knowing how the rules that they set in power or the rules that they set in play affected things. I'll give you an example. When they regulated cannabis, their assumption was that cannabis would sell for about $10 a gram because that's what it was in the black market. Approximately, on average, $10 a gram across the country, right? Some provinces are paying $13 a gram. Some provinces are paying $5 a gram. But on average, it works out to about $10 a gram. So the government said, we will charge $1 per gram. Over the last 6 years, the cost to produce cannabis and the cost to sell cannabis has dropped significantly. Now you can buy cannabis for upwards of $5 a gram, $6 a gram. But guess what?
It's not $1 a gram.
It's still $1 a gram. So the cost to produce has gone down. The cost to tax has ridiculously gone up. And they haven't readdressed that.
Which is why I think the Conservatives won't completely renege the deal. There's too much money involved for the man.
You would think so. And I'm hoping so, because obviously the conservatives love their money. So if it's going to do that, maybe they can change it and allow more for the open market. Because here's the thing. I am a liberal individual, but I'm also a conservative individual. I believe a true answer to our political problems, a true answer to our life's problems is an amalgamation of all of these different belief styles. I don't think capitalism by its own right, unfettered, is the answer. I don't think unfettered socialism is the answer. I don't think unfettered, what's that other one? Communism. I don't think unfettered communism is the answer, but I do see an answer that takes bits of everything. For example, I don't need the government to make shoes. I'm okay with Nike, right? I'm okay with having those types of companies, but I don't need Frank's prime real estate homes. Do you know what I'm saying? Like the basic needs and necessities of a person to live, the simple fact that we have to work to live, like you have to earn a living, means that you don't deserve a living just for being here. You don't deserve to be alive. You have to work to be here, which I don't agree with. I think that's a ridiculous sentiment. I think that is superiorly depressing and falls into this capitalistic mentality. But I do believe we need to have a scenario where people can go to work, provide some, cultural and community give back, right? Some progression, if you will, and provide for their better man that way. But it's an amalgamation of everything, and that's what legalization should be as well. It's not just about the money; it has to impact the community. And right now, it's negatively impacting the community. The fact that I have to go out and spend, like I live in a small town, okay? The fact that I have to go out and spend twice as much to purchase it out here because it's not nearly as accessible for the stores that are out here, so they have to pay more. So in turn, they have to charge more to make their money back. Compared to the ones that are in town, it creates a really unfair market strategy for both.
Right.
And I think
thought of it that way.
And I think legalization, I mean, just in the store, like I said, we have a store near us, and it costs me almost twice as much for stuff. So I save up to drive into town an hour either direction to go to one of the bigger name stores. And I'm trying to start a store. So like this becomes the whole kit and caboodle of why these regulations need to change. They need to make it more accessible. And I'm hoping, because the conservatives are so okay with having, free market access and things like that, they're definitely processed and more progressive towards the business aspect of things. I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is the rest of their platform.
Well, sorry, just looking at the time here, looks like we got about, because I'm gonna Etta's out of school at 11:30 or so, I think. So we'll be.
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, this has been a great conversation nonetheless. I mean, I know we wanted to talk a little bit about THC, and we kind of did, but it ended up meandering through everything, which is one of the beautiful things I love about cannabis. It allows for very open conversation and communication.
Oh, totally. You just go, bye-bye.
Well,
and you add that with ADHD, and it's just, you just go, bleh.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you end up what they call was it fever dumping or trauma dumping? That's what it is. Trauma dumping. Yeah, that's what it is.
I mean, we've both had different trauma dumps, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how the whole thing started. Like I said, I started smoking weed when I was 13. Well, what do you think that comes from? Did I ever tell you why I started smoking weed?
Think so, no.
I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 10, and we attempted to put me on the drugs at the time, Riddled or what I have you. But if you're talking when I was 10, that's 28 years ago. 28 years ago, they had no idea what ADHD was. They had no idea what ADHD was. They still called it ADD.
He's just acting up.
Right. They said he was just excited. He's just got energy. He's just can't sit still, acting up, whatever. And so a lot of kids in my situation ended up getting overdosed on their prescription pills. And it led to something in the industry they called zombification. So these kids would literally, we would go from having super energy, over the top abundance of energy and excitement. There's that hyperactive aspect to ADHD, right? And they would turn us to emotionless zombies. We would basically, my parents said it changed who I was, and they didn't like who it changed me into, so they took me off of it.
You also in that South Park episode that nails this, right? It's like an earlier season South Park episode where I can't remember why, or I think Butter's parents, because he's all jittery.
Yeah.
Is it Butter's or no? It's not Butter's. It's come on, Tweak. This parents own a coffee shop, and he's always drinking coffee all the time, so he's always tweaking like that.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, his parents get him on Ritalin, and it spreads throughout the class. The rest of the kids want to get it, but it changes them. They all go from being like, "Hey, how you doing?" to like, "Hey guys, how are you? Everything's sweet.
Yeah,
that's great."
And that's exactly how it was. And so when my parents took me off of it, it was one of those situations where I personally had to find a way to digest with it. And when I first smoked weed for the first time, I can still remember the way it tasted, the way it made me feel, the way my brain just kind of just went quiet.
This will have been probably through peer pressure at school, right?
No, not at all. No, it was. I had a friend who introduced me to a lot of things. He was a neighborhood kid, kind of like myself.
Uncle Gary.
Yeah, his name was Dan. No, he was 42. No, he was a friend of mine. Kind of just like me, didn't have very many friends. Kind of like an outcast, but him and I, we hung out a lot. We played like Diablo. Not Diablo on the computer, but like with the Diabolos, those outside spinny things. Yeah. We played with those. We played with like yo-yos and stuff like that. Like all the nerdy stuff that wasn't cool at the time, but then ended up being cool later in life. Like I feel like I was born 15 years too early. But him and I would steal stuff from his dad, because his dad always had weed on him. So we would steal stuff from his dad. We would steal porn from his dad. We would steal pills from his mom. Like we were bad kids, right? Like we didn't have anything else to do. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But this would have been about 13. I started smoking cigarettes when I was 11 because of my older sister. Because she started smoking and I wanted to be like her. I idolized her when I was younger.
Oh man.
That's sweet. Well, we can talk about that whole progression in another episode. But
that's very sweet.
But it was one of those situations where him and I would we were terrorists. I got stories of how bad we were as kids, man. Like we used to go around and torch construction areas, because like yeah like we used to do a lot of stupid shit, and I feel bad about it now. And so when I was 13, I had to find something, and it just so happens that I stumbled onto cannabis. And from the first time that I smoked it, and like I said, my brain went quiet, and it gave me the ability to think, and I wasn't foggy and hazy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was laughing at stupid shit, don't get me wrong, right? And you make really funny connections when you're high. Like the conversation does get really funny when you're high.
Really?
But it was like instantly a life-changing thing. And since then I've been and don't get me wrong, when you're 13, you just have to find ways to get it, and you have to deal with not having it. It's not like I was a daily smoker at 13.
Right.
That didn't happen until I was about 16, but when I got my first job. Man, if I could count the amount of money I've spent on weed, that's another episode. That's another episode. But it was all basically as a way to find peace for my own brain, like just to find peace for myself.
It's a very social drug as well. Like it's if you're somebody who struggles socially, if you smoke too much, yes, you'll green out first time, absolutely. But if you drink too much booze first time, you'll puke all over the place,
Yeah.
But it can be great for social stuff. It can be an incredibly, you come out your shell, you laugh at things, you know, your creative side just goes kapow.
Yeah.
Depending on the strain. That joint I just finished this Pink Diesel, and I'm already ready for playing guitar. I can feel it, man.
Yeah. and I think that's something that we're just starting to learn too, the strain of cannabis. And there are thousands of them. Each have their own individual profile. So it becomes...
You can mix that with that.
And sometimes you'll get a great effect, and sometimes you'll get a bedtime trip. But at least you know you're going to get munchies. You're going to get, you might turn on a good 1990s comedy, maybe with Dave Chappelle or not. That's right. And you're going to have one hell of a sleep. It's one of those things where I look at it and go, even the worst cannabis experience, let's say you go out and smoke so much that you puke yourself and then you pass out, right? You get dizzy, you puke, and you pass out. The worst cannabis experience is still better than the best alcohol experience. Just saying. Man. I'm putting that out there.
It totally is. And you know what? You'll
fight me in the comments.
If you smoke all that reefer and you puke and you pass out, the moment you wake up in the morning, you know what you're going to be doing? Going straight for breakfast and laughing about it. You'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah.
You'll be waking up going, oh, I feel absolutely out of it. What did I do? Who was I with? You'll just be laughing about it and going, oh, God, man, I'm hungry.
Yeah, I puked so much last night, I need to go fill my stomach.
You just give me a bit of that as well, just to...
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, anyway, I love the no hangover. That was a game changer, man.
That's right. It's one of the only ones where I can wake up and do it and still feel just as good by the end of the day.
Oh, coffee and a joint first thing in the morning.
Oh,
bring it on.
Oh, ain't nothing better. That's right. Give me a donut and I'm singing. You know what I'm saying?
Good lad.
Give me a donut and I'm singing. You know what I'm saying?
Good lad. Yeah, I'm all right with that. Right, well, we better wrap it there, man, because I've got to go and pick the Wayne up.
Absolutely. That's a great way to end it. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. This has been the very first episode of the Highguys Joints of View, an opinion-based, cannabis-based educational podcast hosted by yours truly, Chris the Highguy Jacobs, and joined today by my best friend, Matt Richardson, who's also banging my sister. That's something I'm working on. Don't worry about that. So you can expect that coming in the future iterations of the podcast. I hope you tune in next month when we're going to talk a little bit about something special, because I haven't decided what the topic will be.
Alrighty.
Have a good day, everyone, and thanks very much for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
Don't forget, stay lifted.